Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Shuklambaradhanam Vitnum Sasibannam Chadubhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyaye Sarva Vignopashantaye Ananta Samsara Samudratara Naukaitabhyam Guru Bhakti Dabhyam Vairagya Samrajyada Pujanabhyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Anjana Nandanam Veeram Janaki Shoganashanam Kabisamakshagantaram Vande Lanka Bhayankaram. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Yadangri Pangeru Harenu Lagnam Nipiyaniram Vimalantarangaha Janami Tattvam Nijamatma Rupam Tam Nomi Narayana Tirthamaryam. Hare Krishna, Guruvayurappa, Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. Namaskaram. Welcome to the 41st session of Krishna Leela Tarangini, which introduces the Tarangam 6. We saw Govardhanodharanam and Govinda Pattabhishekam in 4 sessions, starting from the session 37 through session 40, predominantly from Tirtha's opera, together with some rare and exquisite references from Srimad Bhagavatam, as retold by Sukhabrahmam, Vedanta Desika's Yadavabhyudaya, Leela Sukha's Karnamridam, Periyalvar, Nammalvar, Andal, Harivamsa of Mahabharatam, and many other scriptures, contemporary and modern. To cap them all, Narayana Bhattacharya's one-of-a-kind masterpiece, Narayaniyam, which is nothing but Bhagavatam retold in an abridged fashion, was generously referred to. We enjoyed Bhattacharya's concluding slokam of Dasakam 63, namely the 10th slokam. Bhattacharya asked Krishna, after all, when you took the incarnation of the cosmic boar Varaha, you had lifted the whole earth on the tip of your tusk. Right here in Gokulam or in Vrindavana, you just lifted a single mountain on your 5 fingers. So tell me, Krishna, what is so special here after all? Bhattacharya continues by saying, so did all the gods praise you, Krishna. I am only repeating what the other gods did the benediction to you. O Guruvayurappa, the crestfallen Indra did the Sharanagati, anointed you as Govinda with Kamadhenu's help, and left to his abode of Swarga with your mercy, compassion, grace, and blessings. The residents of Gokulam went back, content and jubilant, singing the praise of their beloved Krishna, little realizing that the one and only Brahman, Paramatma, was amidst them as the cowherd. This is the Maya that you, Krishna, often do. Tirtha proceeds in his opera right after Govinda Pattabhishekam straight to Tarangam 6, highlighting the prelude to Rasa Leela. And thereby he skips one episode which Sukabrahmam describes in a short chapter of 17 slokams, namely the chapter 28 of Dasamaskandam. Sri Badarayani, namely Sukha, the son of Vyasa, describes how Lord Krishna brought Nanda Maharaja back from the abode of Varuna and how the Gokula Vasis, the cowherd folks, were blessed to see Vaikunta because you gave them the darshanam of Vaikunta. The only poet who strictly followed Sukha in narrating this episode, albeit briefly, was Narayana Bhattatri, who described this in 5 slokams of Dasakam 64, right after Govinda Pattabhishekam. Since we have not skipped the sequence of events and Leelas of Krishna in this particular series, even though Narayana Tirtha has barely mentioned or completely omitted it, we will attempt to give a brief outline of this episode, which has a special significance in the Krishna Leela Vinoda. The king of the Yadavas, Nanda Maharaja, observed the Ekadashi Vratam and then considered how to break his Vratam or fast properly on the Dwadashi day, namely the 12th day. People who observe Ekadashi Vratam will understand the significance because on Dwadashi, there are only a few muhurtas left and they have to complete the Dwadashi Parana. It is like treating the Paramatman or Brahman inside with the prasadam. By circumstance, only a few more minutes remained of Dwadashi. And so he decided to take his bath at the very end of the night, although astrologically that was an inauspicious or prohibited time. Therefore, Nanda Maharaja entered the water of the Yamuna. A servant of Varuna, the Devata of the ocean, noticed Nanda Maharaja entering the water at a time forbidden by scripture and took him away to the Varuna's abode. In fact, there is a reference that this particular servant was a half-baked servant who was trying to be more technical and diligent, and he may have been an asura appointed for that kind of a service using little of his jnanam, if he had. In the early morning, the cowherd men unsuccessfully searched for Nanda because Nanda was missing in action. But Bhagavan Krishna immediately understood the situation. And comforting the other Gopas, he went to see Varuna. So Krishna too disappeared, but he had already comforted the Gopas and Gopis that he will bring Nanda. Varuna worshipped Krishna with great and variegated festivity as soon as Krishna entered the Varuna Lokam. Namastubhyam Bhagavate Namastubhyam Bhagavate Namastubhyam Bhagavate Brahmane Paramatmane Na yatra shruyate maya Lokasritti Vikalpina Na yatra shruyate maya Maya Lokasritti Vikalpana. O Krishna, my obeisance unto you. You are the Supreme Brahman, the absolute truth, the Supreme Soul, within whom there is no trace of the illusory energy which orchestrates the creation of this world. Namastubhyam Bhagavate Brahmane Paramatmane Na yatra shruyate maya lokasritti vikalpana. Ajanata mamakena mudena karyavedina. Ajanata mamakena mudena karyavedina. Anitoyam tava pitaya Tadbhavan chantum arhati. "O Krishna, your father, who is sitting right here on this throne, was brought to me by a foolish and ignorant servant of mine who did not understand his proper duty. He did not realize that your father, Nanda Maharaja, had to take his bath at that particular time because he would have missed the Dwadashi. The idiot servant of mine was only on the technical details, not on the overall picture, because he doesn't have that jnanam. Please, therefore, forgive him and forgive me. Forgive us all for this transgression. We did not mean to bring him here, and the servant should not have brought him here." It's noteworthy to mention here that Varuna received Nandagopa with very great honors and seated him on his own throne or simhasanam. Usually in the good old times, when he hears stories about great kavis and great men received by respectable Maharajas, the Maharajas will not give them a different asanam. They will step down from their simhasanam, allow the scholar or the saint to be placed on the simhasanam, and then they will take a step lower than that, and in complete attendance and in reverence to the visiting Mahatma. That is what Varuna did here. Nandagopa was placed in his simhasanam and he was standing in attendance. Afterwards, Varuna begged Lord Krishna to forgive his servant for having foolishly arrested the king of the cowherds. When Krishna brings back Nandagopa to Gokulam, Nanda was amazed to see the influence of Sri Krishna extend in the court of Varunadeva. And he could not get over the amazement and wonderment that he had. Even though he returned after a while, he was still dazed by the very fact that his son was the most honorable person in Varunaloka, and Varuna was completely waiting in attendance at him. After returning home, Nanda described his experiences to his friends and relatives. They all thought Krishna must be the Supreme Bhagavan himself, and hence pleaded to Krishna that they too should enjoy that experience of witnessing what is the Supreme Board, and especially his Supreme Board, otherwise known as Vaikuntha. For a split second, they all realized it is Paramatman who is with them. And during that time, they wanted to witness the experience of Vaikuntha. Of course, they will be brought down to the usual cowherd positions and memory by Krishna in a few moments. But at least at the time when they realize it is Paramatman with whom they have been conversing, they pleaded to him to have that experience of the Supreme Abode. Thereupon, the omniscient Sri Krishna arranged for them to bathe in the same lake where Akrura would be later having his vision of the absolute truth, which we will be seeing in a later session. It's the same place where they all took a bath. And as soon as they immersed themselves into that lake, Bhagavan revealed to the cowherds, men and women, the Brahmaloka, which is realized only by great sages in their mystic trance after thousands and thousands and thousands of years and several births. Satyam Jnanam Anandam Yad Brahma Jyotihi Sanatanam Satyam Jnanam Anandam Yad Brahma Jyotihi Sanatanam Yaddi Pashyanti Munayo Gunapaye Samahitaha Yaddi Pashyanti Munayo Gunapaye Samahita. This is sloka number 15 in the same chapter 28. Bhagavan Krishna revealed the indestructible spiritual effulgence or Brahma Jyoti of Vaikuntha, which is unlimited, conscious, and eternal. Sages see that spiritual existence in trance only, particularly when their consciousness is free of the modes of material nature. look at the blessings of these Gopas and Gopis, that they could have them such a vision without doing anything that these sages have done for millions of years. Let us now move along to the opera. The slokams 138 to 140 give us the summarized descriptions. We will listen to them first.
Vrindavane Shri Krishna Vrindavane Shri Krishna Gopi Sangha Aviniyate Vrindavane Shri Krishna Gopi Sangha Abhiniyate Adau Gopyastata Krishna Gopinam Krishna Sangamaha Gopi Sri Krishna Samvadaha Tato Gopi Parigraha Sattesmin Sangragatvevam Rasa Arambo Nigadyate Sharadeva Sharadagata Swayam Saradeva Saradagata Swayam Tarakodaya Vichesha Basura Variteshu Salileshu Dhimatam Smaritartamiva Basayantyasau Smaritartamiva Basayantyasau.
Thus, in the sixth Tarangam, the beginning of the rasa is narrated in summary form, especially the slokas 138 and 139. And the sloka 140 explains the season of Sharad, autumn, the arrival of Sharad, like the goddess Sarada, Saraswati herself, displaying the special beauty in the rising of the stars in the clear sky peculiar to the season. Tirtha then explains in an elaborate Gadyam 24, the entry of Krishna and how the overwhelmed Gopikas started enjoying his arrival and poured out in praise and benediction.
Tatra Bhagavati Srinivase Tatra Bhagavati Srinivase Paripalita Nijadase Tatra Bhagavati Srinivase Paripalita Nijadase Nijadase Santata Ananta Kalyana Guna Navaratna Ratna Kare Tatra Bhagavati Srinivase Paripalita Nijadase Santata Ananta Kalyana Guna Navaratna Ratna Kare Sarala Murali Nada Samadanchita Navaratna Ratnakare Sarala Murali Nada Samadanchita Vivida Gita Samudghosha Mandagamana Mandagamana Mahollasa Vivida Leela Vilasa Bahudara Kallola Jale Bhuvana Sundare Shri Krishna Viharati Tasmin Vraja Yuvati Manonadyasyandamanaha Samabhivyakta Sharada Vimali Krita Vritti Visheshanubhava Rasadnyaga Tadaikarasasya Abhilashantyaha Sattvaramavivishuhu Ittam Chatasam Vacho Vilasa Pradurbabu பபூ பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவயம் சகி பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவயம் சகி பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவயம் சகி பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமம் பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவயம் சகி பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாம சுருச்சிரஹாச சுந்தரநாச சுருச்சிரஹாச சுந்தரநாச சுருச்சிரஹாச சுந்தரநாசம் தருணாருண கிரணாதர சரசம் சுருச்சிரஹாச சுந்தரநாசம் தருணாருண கிரணாதர சரசம் பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவய சகி 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 நந்தகுமாரம் நகவரதீரம் பிருந்தாவனபுவி விவித விகாரம் நந்தகுமாரம் நகவரதீரம் பிருந்தாவனபுவி விவித விகாரம் பிருந்தாரக கண வந்தித சரணாரவிந்தம் மிளிதமணி மதுகரணிகரம் பிருந்தாரக கண வந்தித சரணாரவிந்தம் மிளிதமணி மதுகரணிகரம் பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவயம் சகி பரமபுருஷம் அனுயாமவயம் அனுயாமவயம் பாவுக சரணம் பாவசந்தரணம் भव्य सेवक जन भाग्य वितरणं भावुक शरणं भवसंतरणं भव्य सेवक जन भाग्य वितरणं अव्यय विमल विभूति विजृंभित अव्यय विमल विभूति विजृंभित दिव्यमणि रचित विविधाभरणम् अव्यय विमल विभूति विजृंभित दिव्यमणि रचित विविधाभरणम् परमपुरुषम् अनुयामवया परमोदारं पापविदूरं स्मरसायक श्रद्धर मतिचतुरं परमोदारं पापविदूरं स्मरसायक श्रद्धर मतिचतुरं विरचितमुरळी गीतरसामृत भरित गणोंगन कौस्तुभहारो परमपुरुषम् अनुयामवयम् युवती गीतं योगी सुललितं कविजन मानस कमल विलसितं शिवनारायण गीत विरचितं Shri Gopala Dayarasamilitam Shivanarayana Tita Virachita Shri Gopala Dayarasamilita Paramapurusham Anuyamavayam Sake Paramapurusham Anuyamavayam Sake Paramapurusham Anuyamavayam Sake.
In the Gadyam, Narana Tirtha says, Bhagavan Srinivasa came down as the beautiful Sri Krishna. Of course, Bhagavan is nothing but Karuna Sagara, ocean or perennial treasure house of qualities. And of course, his playing of various tunes on the flute produces pleasant reverberations in the air, while he himself enjoys his own flute playing. Sri Krishna Viharati Tasmin Vraja Yuvati Manonadya Sendamanaha. He says that the blessed Gopikas and Gopis merged into the Krishna Samudra, like the famous Mundaka Upanishad Vakyam, Yatha Nadya Sendamanaha Samudrestam Gachanti Namarupe Vihaya Thatha Vidwan Namarupat Vimuktaha Parat Param Purushamupaiti Divyam. This Mundaka Upanishad, 3rd canto, 2nd chapter, the 8th slokam. The exact usage has been done by Sri Narana Tirtha himself. Sri Krishna Viharati Tasminni Vrajayuvati Manonadya Sendamanaha. Adi Shankara Bhagavad-pada explained this Mundaka Upanishad slokam like this. Just as flowing rivers having reached the ocean give up their distinct individuality unto the ocean, and thereby you won't even distinguish as to which river had flown in, they lose both their names and forms instantly. So the knower, being freed from name and form, arising from avidya or ignorance, reaches the resplendent Purusha, who is defined as above, who is beyond the avyakta or the unmanifest form. We have heard this famous Subhashitam, Akasad Patitam Toyam, Yatha Gacchati Sagaram, Sarvadeva Namaskaraha Keshavam Prati Gacchati. This is one of the very famous Mahasubhashitam found in Mahasubhashita Sangraha. You may all recollect that this appears at the end of Vishnu Sahasranama and the origin is yet unclear. However, a similar verse is in Skanda Purana, somewhat identical to what we just said. Akashat Patitam Toyam. The equivalent in Skanda Purana is Yatha Toya Pravahanam Samudraha Paramavadi Tataiva Sarva Marganam Sakshan Nishto Maheshwaraha. As all streams ultimately empty themselves unto the ocean, so all these paths of worship to Paramatman ultimately lead to the great Paramatman himself. Shri Krishna Viharati Tasmin Vrajayuvati Manonadya Sendamanaha. Sukha uses the whole chapter of 29, all the 48 slokas to describe how Sri Lord Krishna, intending to enjoy the rasa dance, engaged in arguments and counter-arguments with the gopis. Then there is a description of the beginning of rasa dance and the Lord's deliberate leela of disappearing from the midst of the gopis. Remembering his promise to the gopis when he had stolen their clothes, Bhagavan Krishna employed his Yogamaya Vishesha and manifested within himself the desire to enjoy the leela during an autumn night. Thus, he began to play his flute. When the gopis heard the flute sound, the impulses of Cupid were violently aroused within them, and they immediately abandoned all their household chores and hastily went after Krishna. In the 4th slokam in 29th chapter, Sukha says, Nishamya Geetam Tad Ananga Vardhanam Prajastriyaha Krishna Grihita Manasaha Ajagmuhu Anyonyam Alakshita Udyamaha Sayatra Kantro Java Lola Kundalaha. Krishna instigated a terrible act of thievery in Vrindavana when he played on his flute. The song of his flute entered through the ears of the gopis into the inner treasure chamber of their hearts. That wonderful music stole all their most valuable possessions. What are the valuable possessions of these gopis? Their sobriety, their shyness, their fear, and their discrimination, of course, along with their minds as well. And in a split second, this magical music delivered all these to Krishna. So gopis had nothing more to offer than the 5 valuable things that they offered to Krishna. Now each gopi went to beg Bhagavan to return their hearts and sobriety and whatever they submitted under the feet of Bhagavan. So each beautiful young girl was thinking, I have to capture this great thief because he already stole my heart and everything else. Once I catch him, I will demand that he return everything back to me. And thus they went forward, each unknown to the others, very cleverly. They did not do deliberately. They thought that the others did not know what they were doing. Each one was doing the same thing, thinking that no one else is aware of what she did. Nishamya Geetam tad Ananga Vardhanam Ragasri-Lakshminarasimhan Krishna Grihita Manasaha Ajagmuhu Anyonyam Alakshita Udyamaha Sayatra Kanto Java Lola Kundalaha. Narayana Bhattadiri enjoys in Narayaniyam, Dasakam 65, the effect of that mesmerizing flute and the condition of the gopis. Let us now listen to the second slokam of Dasakam 65 from Bhattadiri and also Andal's Nachiyar Tirumozhi, specifically on the magical flute and the dilemma caused in the hearts of gopis thanks to that.
Sammurchanabihi uditaswaramandalabihi Sammurchanabihi uditaswaramandalabihi Sammurchayantam akilam bhuvanantaralam Sammurchayantam akilam bhuvanantaralam Twadvenunadam upakarnya vibhotarunya Twadvenunadam upakarnya vibhotarunya Twadvenunadam upakarnya vibhotarunya Taddatrisham kamapi chitta vimogam apugo Taddatrisham kamapi chitta vimogam apugo. Karupuram narumo kamalapu narumo Karupuram narumo kamalapu narumo Karupuram narumo kamalapu narumo Tirupavada Chovada Tirthi Tirvikama Tirupavada Chovada Tirthi Tirvikama Marupochita Madhava 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 Marupasita Madhavantan Vajuvayunatamo Marupasita Madhavantan Vajuvayunatamo Marupasita Madhavantan விருப்புற்று கேட்கின்ற வெண்ணாழி வெண்சங்கே விருப்புற்று கேட்கின்ற சொல்லாழி வெண்சங்கே.
Oh Bhagavane, the entire world was charmed into a stupor of immense happiness by the magical flute, especially based on combinations of ascending and descending note patterns, emerging therefrom by the dexterous application of fingers in positions corresponding to the 7 different swaras, sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, and ni. Sammurchanabhihi Uditaswara Mandaladihi Sammurchayantam Akilam Bhuvanantaralam Tadvenunadam Upakarnya Vibho Tarunyaha Tatadrisham Kamapi Chitta Vimohamapuhu. As one can see from the work Sangita Ratnakara, Shrutibhyaha Suswaraha Sajja Rishava Gandhara Madhyamaha Panchamo Daivatascha Ata Nishada Iti Saptate Tesham Samjna Sarigama Padaniti Aparamata. What did Bhattacharya mean when he said Swaramandala, the circle of notes, arrangement of musical scales, Saptaswaraha Trayograma Murchanascha Ekavimshataha Tanahatu Ekona Panchasat Iti Etatu Swaramandalam. 7 swaras, 3 gramas, 21 murchanas, and 49 tanas. This is how Vayu Purana explains it. Tanaha mentioned is equivalent to the talas as per the Vayu Purana description which I just read out now. In Brahmanda Purana, chapters 61 and 62, there is a dissertation on music and the signs of music in section 3 called Upodgada Pada, both. Swaramandala is explained as above. According to lexicographers such as Amarasimha and Halayuda, Swaramandala is a kind of veena or stringed musical instrument. You may have seen lately in the modern times, Hindustani musicians having, like we have Shruti Bhaks in the Southerners, the North Indian musicians generally have a veena-like instrument, but which is a different kind of a contraption known as Swaramandala, which is like a tambura of South. And Swaramandala that Narayana Bhattacharya mentions here is different. It is not the instrument, but it is a circle of notes. Those young gopikas bound to you, Krishna, by firm love, experience indescribable joy in their minds owing to their ears being flooded with the ambrosia of the sound of music emanating from your flute, with its sweetness further enhanced by the nectar of your lips, making that sound, and they drifted into a state of intoxication. Andal wondered in Nachiyar Tirumazhi, in her 7th Tirumazhi, does the mouth of Madhava bear the aroma of camphor or the fragrance of lotus? Are his auspicious lips sweet to taste? Since you have been constantly tasting the lips of Bhagavan, can you please explain to me how the taste is? What Andal asked the flute, which has the most enviable position, the same question was there in the minds of Gopikas as well. Sammurchayantam Akilam Bhuvanantaralam. Was the flute of Krishna special or magical? And or maybe was he deliberately playing an extraordinary and magical tune to attract the Gopikas? The answer lies here. There are various kinds of flutes, each having its own unique timbre, but Bhagavan's flute is explained in many places. It's known as Akarshani or Hemi. Hemi means made of gold and had the quality of captivating the entire universe. That's why it's so special. In addition, the Lord was generating the Kamaraja mantra of Kleem, which had the capability to arouse passion and attract women folk in particular. Although this mantra was not directly meant for any particular gopikas, each one of them considered it as though it has been directed only towards her. Kamaraja mantra or simply Kamaraja refers to one of the mantras associated with Kamarupa, one of the 8 sacred seeds or pita according to the Yoga Khanda, Mantana Bhairava Tantra, a vast sprawling work that belongs to a corpus of tantric texts concerned with the worship of the goddess Kubjika. Let us now listen to Sloka 3 from Narayana Bhattacharya in Dasakam 65 in a raga known as Kantamani. Tage kritya nirataha tanaya prasaktaha Tage nritya nirataha tanaya prasaktaha Kantopashevana parascha Sarorugakshaha Kantopashevana parascha Sarorugakshaha Sarvam Visrijya Muralirava Sarvam Visrijya Muralirava Mogitaste Kantara Desham Kantara Desham Kantara Desham Ai Kantatano Sameta Kantara Deshamai Kantatano Sameta. This is a very unique and special sloka from Bhattacharya. Tageha kritya nirataha tanaya prashaktaha Kantopasevana parasya saroruhakshaha Sarvam visrijya muralirava mohitaste Kantara deshamayi Kantatano sametaha. The word Kanta has been used 3 times by Bhattacharya in one single sloka with a purpose. That's why we also thought, let us use the Raga Kantamani for this special sloka. Oh, the one with an attractive form, Kantatano. When the music emanating from your flute, oh Krishna, here the address is to Krishna. Kantatano is the name that Bhattacharya uses to address Krishna. Oh Kantatano, when the music emanating from your magical flute spread in all directions, captivating the whole world, what was the state of the gopikas in Gokulam? Some were busy preparing dinner, some are doing their other household chores, tending to the small children, some of them are nursing their babies, and some were attending to other motherly duties attendant on grown-up as well as young children. Some others were making their husbands happy. And Kantopa is for the husbands of the various gopis here that are described. But when the strains of music from your magical flute fell on their ears, well, that was it. They all abandoned all of their duties just as if something stung them. So many duties were performed by them, but they still abandoned them. They ran, reached you in the forest. What is the word he uses for forest here? Kantara. So they reached Kantara, traversing the difficult jungle path. In fact, this can only take us to one particular sloka in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, sloka 66. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. Aham tvam sarvabhavebhyo mokshayishyami mashchaka. Is it that the gopis thought something similar to this, even though the Gita was supposed to come much later? Leave all your karma, daily chores, whatever you do, and seek Sharanagati in me alone. I will protect you. Do not bother about the results that come from abandoning your duties. Don't despair. Do paripurna Sharanagati to me. I'll take care of your karmas also. That's what he said to Arjuna. But these ladies were already thinking about it well in advance before even Krishna is going to say this to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. These gopis left all their duties as housewives, mothers and wives and hastened to Bhagavan. Why? Because on listening to the captivating strains of Bhagavan's flute, their minds became solely intent on being with him, and the rest were forgotten or lost in space. I have mentioned earlier about the great literary work Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadasa Kaviraja, who lived in the 16th century. In Bengali and Sanskrit, the Charitamrita is of 3 volumes. And in fact, Sikshashtakam, comprising of 8 verses, composed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who lived between 1486 and 1534, those 8 verses are embedded inside the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadasa Kaviraja, who lived right after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sikshashtakam is the quintessence of Bhakti Yoga. It is found in the 3rd volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita, also known as Antya Leela. And to be precise, the Antya Leela chapter 20 contains verses 12, 16, 21, 29, 32, 36, 39 and 47, making the 8 verses of Sikshashtakam. In chapter 16 of the very same Antya Leela, namely the 3rd volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraja sings 21 slokas about the magical flute of Krishna. And of them, 2 verses stand out, which I would like to share with you. These verses are 126 and 127 of Charitamrita, Antya Leela. They are relevant to the context of this particular discussion of this magical flute. This mesmerizing flute, which we also thought it is special, had the alleged monopoly on Krishna's lips. And when everybody started accusing in jealousy that the lip was really doing, the flute was taking over Krishna's lips, although it is its monopoly, the flute gets angry, according to Kaviraja. And the angry flute challenges the Gopikas to take their share if they dared. He says, why are you afraid of taking your share? Instead of accusing me out of jealousy, you come and enjoy yourself. I'm not preventing you. If you dare, come close to him and take the Rasamrita like which I am enjoying, if they really merit it by abandoning their Lajja, Bhaya and Dharma. So the flute tells the Gopikas, the Gopis, you can taste his lips and can get close to him like what I did, because I don't have Lajja or Bhaya or Dharma. I have done all my Sharanagati right unto him. That's why I have a special place. If you want a similar place to be enjoyed, you better abandon your Lajja, Bhaya and Dharma. It's pretty Vedantic, but let's listen to those 2 slokas in Bengali. Nahe more krodh kari Lajja, Bhaya, Dharma chadi. Chadi dimu kar asi pana. Nahe pimu nirantara. Tomai mora nahika dar. Aniye dekan anre saman. This is sloka 126. Prabhupada writes, thereupon, the flute said angrily to me. This is actually one gopi explaining to the other person, as though the flute addressed to her. Nahe more krodh kari lajja bhaya dharma chadi chadi dimu kar asi pana. Give up your shame, fear and religion, and then come and drink the lips of Krishna. Stop complaining. On that condition, I shall give up my place or attachment for the lips of Krishna. You say I am dominant and I am having a monopoly, I'll give up my place. If only you can get close to Krishna by abandoning your shame and fear and dharma and everything else and doing the Sharanagati. If you do not give up your shame and fear, however, I'll continue to have the drink of the nectar of Krishna's lips. I am slightly fearful because you also have the right to drink that nectar. But if you do not make any effort, like all others, I consider your efforts to be nothing but truna, namely straw. Then the next sloka is equally interesting. Adaramrita nijasware, sanchariya seyi bale, akarshya trijagati jana, Amara Dharma Vaikari, Rahi Yadi Dairya Dhari, Tabe Amai Kare Vidambana. The nectar of Krishna's lips combined with vibration of his magical flute attracts all the people of all the three worlds. However, if we gopis remain patient out of respect for the constraints that we oppose to ourselves and all the principles that we claim that we are maintaining, the flute will continue to criticize us. In other words, one gopi tells the others, saying, hey, we are all very patient because we think that we have the lajja, fear and everything else, bhaya and dharma and everything. We are not observing dharma, nor are we charitable to our own selves. We hold on to lajja and bhaya, we don't do sharanagati, and then we continue to blame the flute. If you want to take the place of the flute, let us do everything that the flute wanted us to do so that we stop criticizing. Let us listen to the condition of Gopikas arriving as per Narayana Bhattadiri in Narayaniyam, slokas 4, 5 and 6. Kashit nija anga paribhushanam, Kashit nija anga paribhushanam, Kashit nija anga paribhushanam adadana venu pranadam Upakarnya kritartha bhusha. Kachit nijayanga paribhushanam adadanaha venu pranadam upakarnya kritartha bhusha. Tvamagata nanutataiva vibhushitabhyaha tayeva samruruchire tavalochanaya. Kachit nija anga paribhushanam adadanaga venu pranadam upakarnya kritartha bhushagam tvam agata nanutataiva vibhushitabhyaham tayeva samruruchire tavalochanaya. Haram nitamba bhuvi kanchana dharayanti Ganchim chakunta bhuvi deva samagatatvam haritvam atma jaganasya mukunda tubhyam vyaktam bhavachaiva mugdha mukhi vishesha. Kachit kuche punaha asajjita kanchulika vyamogata paravadubhihi Alakshmana, Alakshmana, Tvamayayo Nirupama Pranayati Varam, Tvamayayo Nirupama Pranayati Varam, Rajabhisheka Vidaye Kalashidhareva. Rajabhisheka vidaye kalashidareva kalashidareva. In sloka 4, Narayana Bhattadiri says, Kaschit nija anga paribhushanam adadanaha venu pranadam upakarnya kritartha bhushaha tvamagata nanutataiva vibhushitabhyaha Tayeva samruruchire tavalochanaya. Again, here in this sloka, he has used paribhushanam, kritartha bhushaha, vibhushitabhyaha. How many bhushanams here? How many bhushitams here? That's why we thought we should choose Bhushavali for this special slokam. Some of the gopikas had adorned themselves at dusk with ornaments and perfume, etc., etc. They did it because they wanted to please their husbands as the night was falling. Some others, longing for the amorous sports of the night and hoping to meet their paramour, had only half completed adorning themselves. These are the young ladies. It was then that they came to hear the strains of your flute, whether it is gopikas or gopis. Immediately they dropped everything. They set out for Vrindavanam in the very same states they were in. Some were really wearing the ornaments. Some of them were doing half makeup. However, it was the half adorned gopikas who were a lot more pleasing to your eyes, Krishna, than the fully adorned ones or fully prepared ones. Because you could understand the intensity of their love for you, because they forgot themselves, they came to surrender unto you. That was demonstrated by their eagerness and the great hurry to reach you, despite the incomplete nature of their ornamentation or preparedness. This may look to be a paramar activity, but this can also be stretched into a Vedantic part. When someone abandons everything, in absolute abandonment, whatever they were doing, if only to reach that state of Sharanagati to Bhagavan, their half preparedness, even in the Vedantic style or the spiritual style, is ignored by Bhagavan, and Bhagavan is willing to accept that soul. In short, they had given up all body consciousness or Sarira Abhimanam and were totally attached to you. That's why the Gopikas and Gopis attained a much superior position than anybody else in creation. Deva samagata tvam haritvam atma jaganasya mukunda tubhyam vyaktam babashaiva mugdhamuki visheshat mukunda tubhyam. So we use Mukunda Priya. Oh Bhagavane, who have assumed the human form for the sake of this Leela. A young Gopika, on hearing the sound of your flute, became confused and, forgetting all propriety, wore the necklace around her waist and the waistband around her neck. In her confusion, everything got reversed. The necklace was around her waist and the waistband or the Udyanam was around her neck. And in that very state came to you. It appeared as though that Gopika, whose face was rendered pale, owing to extreme longing and beautiful due to the rising beads of perspiration, was drawing your special attention to the special attractiveness of her form. Of course, Bhattadri uses a specific reference to the hip. Attractive, the hip became attractive because she was wearing a necklace around it instead of a Vodyanam, although it was unintentional. And in her naturally attractive body. These are all the adjectives that Bhattadri uses in a very heightened state. Haritvam atma jaganasya mukunda tubhyam vyaktam babashaiva mugdhamuki visheshat. In this context, the compound word haritvam can be spelt into its components in two ways. Haraha asya asti iti hari. Tasya bhavaha haritvam. This is one explanation. Haraha asya asti iti hari, tasya bhavaha haritvam. The state of being with a garland of necklace. Hartum shilum asya asti iti hari is another way of splitting it. Hartum shilam asya asti iti hari, tasya bhavaha haritvam. The state of being habitually attractive. Thus, by splitting the word into its components in two different ways, the figure of speech I have often talked to you about, the double entender employed by Bhattadri very commonly, can be easily understood here also. Another Gopika, eager to hear the melody of your flute, forgot to wear her the special garment that he usually wears over the bosom. The other Gopikas too had left along with her, did not even notice that she was not wearing anything, because they were equally excited on hearing your melody from the flute. They also were running helter-skelter like this lady. While it is in women's nature to look at other women's dress and ornaments, this is what Bhattadri says, I didn't say that. It is in the nature of women to look at somebody else as to how they have worn that dress or what type of dress they are wearing or ornaments they are wearing. The fact that the other Gopikas did not notice one of them having almost come out of their home half covered would clearly show that their attention was absolutely diverted elsewhere in listening to and imbibing the melody of your flute, because they were not bothered about how the other women were looking at. In fact, Sukha says in chapter 28, all the gopis had purely spiritual bodies. But when some of the gopis, husbands, and other family members stopped the young girls from going, Bhagavan Krishna had magically arranged for them to temporarily exhibit material bodies, which they then left at the sides of their husbands. Is it possible? Yes. That's what Bhagavatam and many other literature that came after that confirm. In this way, all the gopis disappeared from their relatives and went off to meet Krishna. Narada Bhattacharya says, specific to this context, that Krishna gave the gopis two bodies at that moment, Yoga Sharira and Bhoga Sharira, which they were unaware of. The Yoga Sharira gopis were doing their daily and ordained chores as prescribed, pleasing their relatives, whether it is husband or mother or father or mother-in-law or father-in-law. Yoga Sharira rushed to Sri Krishna, and hence the spouses and relatives of all those gopis were blissfully ignorant of their absence because they were very much present there, and thought that the whole flute and people saying that they all went to the forest, etc., was a non-event, was not happening. This is also another reason that the husbands of those gopis were always feeling happy and they never felt jealous of Krishna. We will talk about that much later in another chapter. One may wonder as to how the concept is different from the usual concept of Sharira Traya. Because I mentioned about the Yoga Sharira and Bhoga Sharira. Usually it should cause some confusion. Is it not that we have heard of the Sharira Traya or the doctrine of three bodies? Karana Sharira or the causal body, Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body, and Sthula Sharira or the gross body. But the Sharira Traya doctrine is well entrenched in the systems of Yoga, Advaita Vedanta, Tantra, and Shaivism. The Taittiriya Upanishad describes Panchakosas, which are often equated with the three bodies. Either you call it Sharira Traya or Panchakosa, and must. The three bodies are often equated with the five sheaths or Panchakosas, which cover the Atman. The Mandukya Upanishad describes four states of consciousness. First is called Vaiswanara, or the waking consciousness. Second is called Taijasa, or Taijasa usually means endowed with light, but in this context, it's a dreaming state. First is waking consciousness. Second is a dreaming state. The third is Prajna, or the deep sleep. While the fourth or the last is Turiya, the super consciousness state, that is known as the fourth state, equated with Atman and Purusha. Well, this is a vast Vedantic subject, and we will have to reserve it for yet another day. Of course, we will see more on the mind of the gopis and the state prelude to the rasa experience in the next session, a lot more elaborately. Narayana, 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 Narayana. Hare Krishna. Narayana, 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 Hare Krishna, Thiruvaiyaru.